I would like to call to order this Brunswick Commission meeting regularly scheduled for Wednesday, September 20th, 2023. We will now stand for our invocation and pledge of allegiance. For our invocation, we will have Reverend William Lewis from First Jordan Grove Missionary Baptist. We appreciate you being with us this evening. Thank you for your leadership in our community, and thank you for bringing us open in prayer.
Esteemed, almighty, and righteous God, Father, once again we come before your throne. Father, we come before your throne this day with bowed heads and humble hearts. Father, we thank you that you allowed us to be in thee at this time and this place. Now, Father God, as we go before our people, we ask that you lead us and guide us in what we should say and how we should act. And we're making decisions over people's life. Let us make decisions with compassion in our heart. In Jesus' holy and precious name, I do pray on this day. Amen.
Thank you for that prayer, Mr. We will now move on to the adoption of the agenda, adoption of September 20th, 2023 regularly scheduled meeting agenda. Is there any addendums or subtractions? Hearing none, we'll open it for a motion. Here's in a second. All those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, motion passes. The item 8 is deferred. We will now move on to adoption of December 20th, 2023 regularly scheduled meeting agenda as amended. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
First, do I hear a second? Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the agenda is approved. I'll do that pause. I know it's a little pause between. We will now open it up. Public comment, City Clerk Atkinson.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm
How you doing?
Tito Exford. I'm with FEMA. And I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. I am in the area and I am working on your behalf for Hurricane Idalia. And just want to make sure that you're aware that we are opening up a DRC tomorrow and we will be able to take applications there. I have an 8 number that people can call if they aren't able to go to the
I'm
DRC.
gonna pause you real quick. No, Commissioner Harris is gonna say it. Tell us what a DRC is
Oh, I'm
and then
sorry.
explain it to us.
Okay, the DRC is the Disaster Recovery Center. I apologize. We
There we
work
go.
with a lot of acronyms and I should know better. It's the place that we will have set up with the SBA, the Small Business Administration. They will also be there so that people can do applications if they were affected by the storm. I've been in touch with the city clerk and the city manager. They both had contact information. So if any of you want to meet with me individually, we can meet and you can tell me if you have some concerns that you want to address with your constituents or anybody's reaching out to you asking for questions. I also have information that I am distributing via an email distribution list, and I've added you to it. If you're not receiving it, follow up with your colleagues and make sure you're getting this information. But I'm just sending out news releases to tell you, what the amounts are that have been received by individuals in the 3 counties that were declared for individual assistance, sending out information that explains the difference between individual assistance and public assistance, and very briefly explain that individual assistance is, yes, ma'am. Because you can't hear me.
We had a really sensitive mic. You almost got to talk right into it.
Okay, is it better?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, so I'll be sending you more information in email that will explain the difference between individual assistance and public assistance. And the individual assistance is going to be for your constituents and for residents, the individual people that were affected, and then the public assistance is for the public infrastructure, things like roads, bridges, and those kinds of just. I'm available if you need to speak with me individually. As I said, I don't know if you heard me, but we can meet individually. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. And SBA is also here. I think he's going to announce that to you. But we partner together, and part of our application sometimes asks that you apply to the SBA, the Small Business Administration. Is a part of our application process. And people that apply and they are not eligible to receive assistance from the SBA, they will be passed back to FEMA for other needs assistance that may be in the form of volunteer assistance or some other support. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's important that you're asked to register with SBA, that the residents or the constituents do follow the process. Also, there may be some people that receive letters that say that they have been denied. That's not a final decision. It may be that in a letter, it also says more information about requirements that have not submitted or documents that are still needed. So if anyone receives a letter that says that they're not approved for FEMA assistance, they should read through that letter to make sure that they're not being requested to send additional information. That's all that I have for now. I'll be in touch and continue to send you updates. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And I think City of Atkinson has all of your contact information. We will make sure that we make that publicly available on our website. Thank you for being here in our community and working with us as we work through that so much.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yep, pull it down a little bit. There you go.
Is
Appreciate
that
you.
better?
Yeah.
I'm so thrilled to be here with my colleague, Tamika from FEMA, and I appreciate taking a few moments of your time. During a disaster declaration, many kinds, but especially during a presidential declaration, most people are not aware of the fact that the Small Business Administration has disaster resources for homeowners and renters in addition to our traditional businesses. So I'm just so grateful to you all for taking time for your public, as well as my colleague, Tamika, for making reference to the fact that we are offering what's called the full circle of federal resources. The Small Business Administration has low interest loans. It's certainly not the grants that FEMA offered, but we have 2.5% 30-year fixed loan for homeowners up to $500,000, an additional $100,000 for personal property placement, and that is also available to renters. So renters who have damage to their cars or personal property, they can apply for these low interest loans. And we encourage that information to be shared with the community. Get it? Small Business Administration, people don't think of homeowners. But as my colleague said, part of the FEMA process is people often get an email that will say, make an application with the Small Business Administration. People will very understandably say, I don't have a business. Why am I being directed to do that? We are FEMA resource partners. Even people with a fixed income who feel I can't afford or I will not qualify for a loan, keep on in that circle, that process, because as my colleagues said, that denial is, for want of a better explanation, it's almost a Willy Wonka golden ticket to get you through to the next category of grant, FEMA grant. So we just encourage everybody to engage in the full circle process of federal resource. For our businesses, FEMA doesn't have resources for businesses, and of course the SBA does. We have 4% fixed interest loans up to 30 years, up to $2 million. And for nonprofits, it's 2.375. So we encourage everybody to apply. I gave the full, I do have quite a bit of paperwork with details. I did give that the clerk and the counselors here. Please, nobody should assume they cannot qualify for these loans. They're a very streamlined process. This is a disaster. So we want everybody to apply for these loans. These are taxpayer dollars that we are basically trying to get back into the community in these difficult times. SBA is making physical disaster loans. That's for any kind of damage you can see in your eyes, available in Glenn County to homeowners, renters, and businesses. In addition, what we call economic disruption, economic injury loans are available in Glenn County and all the surrounding counties. So that would be Camden, Brantley, McIntosh, and there's one I'm missing, Wayne County. Okay, so we understand business doesn't stop at the borders. I will take a lot of your time here on going forward, but to tell you that we have opened a BRC, Business Recovery Center, in Glenn County, and that is at the location of Ballard Community Center. The old gym, the Parks and Rec director told me everybody would know. That's at 30 Nimitz Drive. And again, we've got all that information in detail with the clerk and your city attorney. Your fine here taking all the details. And we would just hope that you would share the messaging with your community. As I said, hand in hand with FEMA, and we want everybody to get as many sources as possible. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We appreciate you for that information, and we will, again, make sure we make that public available, but also any handouts that we have that needs to be gotten to businesses, we'll make sure we get it to our downtown development, and we'll make sure we get it to EDA and chamber partners and make sure all of them have it. I know the chamber is involved with you guys setting up everything, so we are happy that you all have done that.
Chambers has been wonderful, and we are doing we're starting an event on Friday that I think they're going to be pushing online the following
Perfect.
Tuesday. And I'm happy to send anything electronically if that's here to
That's wonderful.
I'll get to it. Thank you so much.
City Clerk, that's it for public comment? Okay. We will now move on to alcohol license violation. Consider disciplinary action for Jerk Shack. Deputy Brown, bring you to walk us gently through.
Good evening. We are back from our previous meeting on September 6th. He received a 2-week probation. I have not had any complaints or reports within that period, and he is here to speak with you about the story.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. I think last time we had a conversation holistic about some of the things you were thinking about, going to work on. Hope that you've probably had some follow-up conversations with your staff about ensuring open lights will be turned off. There won't be service after times that you all have closed and things of that nature. So have you had those conversations with staff and those who you employ?
Most definitely.
Okay. Perfect. Is there any other mediation, anything else you've done internally to ensure that we don't have this issue again as a city?
Well, actually, I just go ahead and make sure I have my security, I do my staff, I do my training like I did. I make sure things that happened in the past will happen again. So I stay on top of my game.
I appreciate that. Listen, for me, to move quickly through it, as I looked at the background in which City Attorney Corey sent us over in consultation with other commissioners as well, it seems like it's a pretty solid standard for serving underage, which is 6 months and $150 fine, 6 months probation, $150 fine. To me, this seems I hate to say less serious, but it doesn't rise to the occasion as serving alcohol to someone who is underage. So it would seem to me that those punishments need to be the same. I would be looking at something between a 3-month to a 6-month probation with no fine. That seems in concordance with the things that I've seen. Probation means that you can continue to sell and operate as such. But we just want to make you stay under the guidelines that have been set forth. I'll open it to the commission for questions or comments.
I had one question based on Captain Wilson's report that was included in our packet and that we also saw 2 weeks ago, where he said that there were still 15 to 20 patrons. He observed that the bartenders were still serving alcoholic beverages, and people were still going to the bar. So I wasn't sure if that was all confirmed, even though the owner said that he was in the back, he didn't hear anything that was going on, and he was cooking, but that there was no alcohol involved. So that I was not sure of, and I don't know if anything was definitively stated one way or the other on whether there was still alcohol being served to the patrons that were remaining in the bar, in the restaurant after hours.
I would turn that question to Deputy Marshal Brown, but I will tell you just my individual view on it. I think that the officer, when he entered the business, had their body cam on. So those things can be witnessed in that body cam space. Whether or not we can definitively get to the absolute second that anything was sold, I would say that we need to probably believe our officers as they enter space and, understand what they witnessed in that moment. Same way that, we believe them when they go in and say someone has served them their age, when they send those individuals in to do those checks as well. At least my thought around this, what we do with this violation, whether the 3 to 6 probation, seems even in accordance with him maybe served alcohol after the time where he was should have been closed. So Deputy Marshal, I'm not sure if you have any additional information or correction of whether that was served.
There was body cam footage. I'm not sure if you had a chance to view it, Commissioner Martin. There is body cam footage, and I do have Captain Wilson here if you guys have any questions for him, which was his body cam.
Captain Wilson, I'm happy for you to come forward and answer for Commissioner. Thank you for being here with us this evening.
So the question, can she repeat the question for me?
Question was, there was a discrepancy between your report, alcohol was being served after hours, and the owner's assertion that there was no alcohol served after hours. Even he said he was back, but he was kind of sure that no alcohol had been served, but that doesn't
Okay.
connect with what you kind of brought us.
Correct. So based off of when I walked to the establishment, it was consistent with the activity I saw behind the bar. That bartender was still serving alcohol with bottles in hand. You could hear the bottles rattling around, drink. There were people going up to the bar. And even if you looked on the dance floor, there were still beer bottles in their hands. Some were consuming alcohol on the property at that time.
Commissioner Martin, you get that?
I did. Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess in light of that and the actual requirement, let me move my cough drop out. I'm sorry. And the actual requirement for the violation, I had a brief chance to look at the video. It's still kind of foggy. It's not a precise video. But what I was able to take from it is I did see somebody with a drink, but they were at the table already putting it down. So I don't know if it was drink or if it was water or what it was. But for me is that the ordinance fits the actual violation. And what is the requirement of the ordinance per the actual violation? That's for me, that's what I want to make sure we're in accordance with that. So I understand everything that took place, but what's the actual punishment for actual violation according to the ordinance?
Right. And I do think it's important to note too, that the ordinance states that you can't serve after the hours of 1:05 a.m. and that all patrons must leave the building by 2. And so there's 2 ways to get the violation, that it's in violation essentially of both. If there is, I think there's conclusive proof that there's alcohol being served and that there's patrons still remaining in the facility. With that said, I think I've tried to do, when I presented documentation to the commission, show going back as far as I could to when this commission, not this specific, but the last task that we had in 2016 was to start bringing forth alcohol violations to the city commission for their informative purposes, and then to make decisions on alcohol. This is the first instance of operating under the hours of operation code section. So I do think that if you get back through the memo and how I outlined it, I mean, it's clearly not as severe as the punishments allotted for underage sales, because that requires a minimum probation and fine for a first time. Those are ratcheted up as each time if there's a secondary and third, because if you all recall, we were seeing repeat offenders, and so we tried to address that code. So in reality, I think that it is it's a first time violation for the entirety of the code section. So you're looking at a far less severe situation than I think what is otherwise contemplated. You'll note too, in that long list of violations, I mean, we've had more severe even than underage sales. We've had firearms being discharged directly contemplated in the ordinance. And you will see that the commission has handed extremely severe punishments in those cases. So I think this probably falls on the lowest limit of how severe something like that might be.
Because we don't have like a BC or anything like that.
No,
2,
we
3.
don't. The only case specific punishment, if you want to call it that, for a violation is the case of underage sales. It is very specifically documented that first time is probation and fine, second time additional, a longer term probation and increased fine, third time again you're considering the suspension or revocation license on a third time offense. Other violations, I would say, start when there's either evidence presented of like a scanner or something along, additional training, security, probably starting with probation without conditions, and that allows us to stay open, the license stays in place, and essentially there is not a violation considered if they make it through the probationary period without incident.
Okay. All right. So based upon that, for me, I would go with the minimum. So if we're saying 3 months, no fine. That's just me speaking. I'm not the entirety. So whatever the consensus is.
I think at this point, there is minimum. And so that's why we're setting the standard. I don't think the fund should be instituted because it would rise to the occasion of an underage sale, which I don't think it meets. I don't want to hamper the business on any other kind of thing. So I think the real decision is between a 3-month probation or a 6-month probation. And either one of those seem fair to me. It's just whatever is before the commission, because that allows you operating as is. And like you said, keep it tight.
I would be in favor of maybe about a 3-month probation with the condition that additional training is done with employees so that they know unequivocally when the bar shuts down, when the patrons have to leave, when the business closed down.
Should we have forward as a motion?
I think he said.
I will present that as a motion then, yes.
Okay. So once again, the probation means that he cannot violate selling to anyone underage, as well as closing, well, as well as last call at 1:45. And then close that to everyone in the building at 2, unless you're an employee, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say that too, on probation, this is like any other probation. It's not limited in what violations might
Okay.
occur. It is a violation of the way the ordinance is written. It's a violation of the ordinance, state, any regulation that, because there could be a violation at a state level that would qualify, as something under the probationary period. Right. Right.
I was just wanting to make sure, because I think sometimes with the crowd that you have, sometimes 1:45, if everyone's 20 people are trying to drink, it just is chaotic. I know this weekend is about to be really busy. Want to make sure you're in compliance because like Mayor said, we don't want you to not be able to, make me, but, just want to make sure that you're cautious of the operation, from moving on today up until, always.
I agree with what everybody's saying. And I did have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Moore, and had an opportunity to go over the event. I know Captain Wilson, so I do trust his judgment and things, but I've also had an opportunity to speak with Mr. Morris and go over the entirety. And so, for me, he's explained to me that the training that he takes his employees through, that he has already spoken with them about that and stuff. So I'm gonna say in this situation, I trust both gentlemen. I had the opportunity to know both of them, so I trust what both of them have said. It's clearly a violation. We can't get past that. It is what it is. It happened. It's a violation. So we have to move forward in what our ordinances call us to do. I don't think, as everybody has said, that it's something that's so paramount that it's going to call for us to hamper your ability to do business and continue to be a contributing entrepreneur in the city of Brunswick. And you've proven that you want to be here, proven that you can run your business and be successful at it. You've proven that you can comply and do comply with ordinances. That's something that snuck up on you and caught you. But we're at this point now, so how do we move forward? So for me, the 3-month probation, for me, that would be the minimum that we need to be at on tonight. And so again, this is our first time. Your first time is your precedent time. So a precedent is being set here tonight. So now we've not been confronted with this type of violation before. Now we have, it's gonna come again. Somebody else is gonna do it. May not be you, hopefully it won't be, but it will be somebody else come again.
It won't be me.
It won't be the jerk shack. But so moving forward, and even in looking at what has happened and how it's happened, so to cut all the rest of it, You good with what everybody else has said? 3 months, Johnny, how you feel about it?
I'm fine.
Commissioner Martin?
Fine with it. What I want to say is that I want the folks with an alcohol license and they're doing business to understand that the mission up here takes closing on Sunday at 1:45 seriously. I want to ask our police department to continue doing, just because this is the first time this is happening out there. We want it stopped. We've got an ordinance that says 1:45, that's it. So let's abide by that and be sure when folks get an alcohol license, their businesses know that we mean what we're talking about. On Sunday, you close that shop down at 1:49. And I too have spoken with George and I think he's got the same place and he wants to run a good business and do the right thing by his patrons. And I think the best thing for everybody, not just owner of the alcohol establishments, is that they abide by the and that means closing their shop at 1:45 on Sunday and no more alcohol sold. I go along with that. I think this is very prudent, what we're doing up here.
And just so I click the motion, I think we have a motion on the table from Commissioner Martin of the probation with training. What I would say is, I think her motion would be correct as far as setting a precedent. We would count your training having already been, if you've had your conversations with your staff, you've put in the safeguard to ensure it doesn't happen anymore. You had a conversation with your patrons about how to move under this ordinance. We would count that training as done. But as far as the motion, I do think it sets correct precedent that anyone who comes before us, we would put forward this probation and an ask of them to continue to do that training to ensure it doesn't happen again. So with that motion before us, I'd ask for a second. We have a first and a second. All those in favor, show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you so much. Now move on to appointments of the Coastal African American Historic Preservation Mission. We have one appointment, and the appointment that is put before us today is Mr. Christopher Epps, who is located at 519 Norwood Street. He has put forward his resume, and it's in all of our packets. I hope we've had a chance to look over them.
Motion to approve Christopher Epps as an appointment to the Coastal African American Historic Preservation Commission.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. I don't want to move too quickly. I apologize. Hold on one second. Commissioner Martin.
Now, if Christopher Epps is in the audience, if he's
Yes.
attending, I mean, I would
Mr.
love for him to come forward. If he's
Epps.
not, I didn't mean to cut that short. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. It's all right. Ms. Epps. Can you please introduce yourself to us? Talk to us a little bit about your interests of this board. We're blessed to have you be a part of our community and working to really advance our cultural aspects here. So thank you, Mr.
Yes, thank you for having me here today, and thank you for accepting me to be on the Coastal African American Board. Just moved to Brunswick, Georgia, so a new resident here, so it's glad to be here. I'm working with the NRCS downtown here, so just want to get more involved in the community. You know, start opening position with the Coastal African American Board, and I said, why not apply and be more involved within the community? As you saw my background, I've been dealing with a lot of, first of all, I'm a graduate of HBCU. I know the historical aspects of African Americans and how we advanced our race in the community. So that's one of the purposes I applied for this position. And also my community leadership and aspects. I've done it for, I've been in my hometown, Mississippi. So once again, thank you for having me. And thank you for also accepting me on this board.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Oh, graduate of Corn State University.
Home of Steve McNair.
Yes.
That's it. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Look forward to working with you in the community. We'll now move on to items to consider approval of September 6, 2023 regularly scheduled minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve this from September the sixth, if no changes are necessary.
Second.
Hearing a first and all those in favor, show by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll now move on to consider approval of resolution to adopt the 2023 comprehensive plan. Director Hunter.
So I'll be brief with this. The comprehensive plan was transmitted after your approval to the Coastal Regional Commission on August 3rd. We received approval on August 23rd and the approval from DCA August 28th. According to the Regional Commission, we were the first in the coastal region to submit their comprehensive plan.
Good job.
So the last step in this process is the resolution that you have before you that formally adopts the comprehensive plan. And we do ask tonight that you take that step and approve the resolution and adopt the 2023 comprehensive update.
Any questions or comment? Hearing none.
I'll
we'll
just
move-
say, great job. I know that's a big effort, and we really appreciate everything that you do, Mr. Hunter, and your staff do a stellar job, and I'll make an motion to approve the comprehensive plan for 2023.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor, show by the sign of aye.
Uh,
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Director Hunter. We'll now move on to consider approval authorizing resolution G./FTA 5307 transit funding application. Director Hunter.
Yes, this is the fun time of year when we're working lots of grants, and currently we are working on the application to secure funding for Y25 transit funding. So that is not this current fiscal year, it'll be the next fiscal year. Brunswick is eligible for $916,548 in funds for that year. I'm working with our Architects WRA, who've helped us in the process to stand up this program, developing our application. Depending on how everything falls in terms of percentages, we're probably looking somewhere around a 35% match requirement for full year FY25. That's consistent with what we projected this past year as we were looking at FY24 and moving into FY25. So that would be somewhere in the 300,000.
Okay, I was about
dollars.
to ask you what does that
Yeah.
look like in real dollars?
Yeah, in real dollars, it's 300s. I don't have the exact yet. Depending on how much we allocate for planning and administration versus how much goes for real operations, it skews up down a little bit. So I'll have the exact figures before we finish the application next week. But as a formality, so that FTA and GDOT know that you have approved that we're making this application. They do have this required template resolution that we're asking you to approve at this time. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Hunter, I was reading over briefly. So this grant would be for, just making sure, for only minority businesses? When it, I don't number?
No.
Okay.
This funding is for the transit operations. I think you're looking at clause 5 of
That's
the
what I-
first page.
Okay.
So the state sets a statewide DBA requirement, and there's language in the grant application and verifications that when the state sets that goal, this, we are basically agreeing that we will do our best to meet that goal for DBEs and minority businesses.
So that's in the service.
Yep.
Well, my comment is one of excitement. Because to see, that we're being proactive for future sustainability is paramount to me. I mean, I'm excited about that because that's something that when I came in as a commissioner, I felt that we were more reactive, were proactive. And so to be planning in 23 for 25, to me shows definite progress that we have now adopted a spirit of moving to be proactive and being reactive, waiting to, okay, fiscal year 24 is here and we're at April or May, and now we're trying to put in for things and see how it's going to be covered. I say kudos to you and the entire administrative staff and those working on this. So keep up the good work and let's continue to be proactive. Thank you.
John, to what extent is the county involved with this?
On this side of it, in terms of the application process, they're not really involved. I am in communication with the committee, and as they are working on their transit planning, they are considering our transit work as in with that. From a dollar standpoint, I know that City Manager McDuffie worked really hard and did a number of arms this past year for transit funding from the county. So I would anticipate that as we continue to move forward, we'll be able to grow that partnership and include more in it.
As far as their involvement right now, we are working on an RFP for the transit, and we do anticipate inviting the county personnel to evaluate those proposals once we get them in. And I have spoken with the county commissioners, assured them that we will be back to the table to request funding this year as we stand up the program for next spring. So the intent is to have them in on the process of looking at proposals, determining, what will be recommended going forward and bringing that to this body for approval, and then going, having a mechanism in there where we're asking or requesting funding from the county.
But are we also looking at other corporate sponsors?
That will be something that we'll be working on. There's a lot of opportunities to help offset for the costs along with that.
Yeah, and I have some ongoing meetings with businesses on the island to talk about what their needs are, and kind of while we're developing RFP to understand what the scope of the services will be to support all of the entities that we want to support and how it can be engaged in the process. So, looking forward, we'll be speaking with the college, with other businesses, with entities on the island, and anyone who can partner or who will, engage service that we think will, help us in the process.
Are you saying island or island? Are you including Jacob?
Right now, Simmons is the primary. We don't have, and one of the things about what we're doing, we hope that it will be adaptable to the other needs in the community. Right now, we don't have a prospective service to Jekyll, but that's not saying that future years won't, make that change.
Yeah, and I know, I would say I would even say Jekyll, because at one point, Jekyll used to have transportation for their employees. I don't see it now. I don't know how in depth it is now.
There's still a number of the hotels do. I know of at least 3 that do.
Yes, so try to buy in on them somewhat or something.
Director Hunter, thank you for your work on this. Thank you for staff's work on this. I know it's been something we've definitely talked about over the last 18, 19 months, whether it was the conversation around SPLOST and how we get it wrapped into that, us working on the BATS committee and Commissioner Martin, thank you for your work on that. I know you're consistently at the BATS and really trying to push through a comprehensive plan that has 4 different routes in it that not only includes the city, but includes the island, includes the sea, and also for us to be a community of the future, a city and a county of the future, we need to include the airport. That would wrap in all business centers and all travel centers as well. If we're talking about thinking truly about the future, how I understand that this is a first step and is Brunswick taking a first step, putting skin in the game to provide transportation for our citizens. Real quick, we were kind of approximating with the 300,000 number. That 300,000 number is between 3 and 350, 350 and between 399.
Right now, I was between 300 and 399.
Okay, so
We're
it's
really starting to dial that in right now. and know
Okay.
That answer.
so it's somewhere in between
Yeah.
there. But that number, the reason I say
It makes a big difference.
it makes a huge difference. And it makes a difference about what we commit, how we can commit.
Yep.
At the same time, there are several other major projects, infrastructure projects that we got to get done.
Yep.
Each layer is extremely expensive. The quicker, I know this is important, and I know that we have to take this step. The quicker we can get that number as a commission, I think the better it helps us figure out how we move around this piece.
Definitely.
This piece is, I know you've already stated it, but if you can just make it clear for me, 2 things. And for the 300 some odd $1,000, what do we get? And then what does our transportation system look like that we've kind of thought about? I know over time we've looked at different systems. You guys visited some places, so.
So what we get for that $300,000, obviously first, is the $900,000.
Gotcha.
You know.
I wanted to
that's-
set it as
that's
clear as
simplest.
possible.
That's the simplest way to
Yes.
look at it. The way the.
Totaling a $1.2 million
2 million,
investment.
potentially more, you know,
Gotcha.
depending on how other sponsorships, writer dollars, all those things work out.
Got it.
What was envisioned in the transit plan is what's called a micro transit model. The simplest way to describe it is local Uber. It's not necessarily a competitive with Uber. It operates a little differently in that it's a share program. It's scheduled both via app and via phone line. And there is a defined perimeter. in
And
which
when
that
you
can
say
operate.
app or phone line, it's on your phone or you can call
Call
in.
in,
So
correct.
for those who don't have access to a cell phone, they have access
That's
to
correct. Yep.
the service.
And it would get us, wouldn't quite get us to the airport, but essentially the bulk of mainland Brunswick out 3-1 to I-95, up to the spur at at I-95, and wrap around to Fletsy over to Centene. That's the first phase.
Perfect.
The second phase would be adding similar model onto St. Simon's that connects to a hub in Brunswick. That would be in a second year. So right now, it is a little bit more limited than we like, but it is a first step.
Right.
And I think it will grow very quickly once it's on the ground and running and people see how it operates.
And the other thing about this piece that's smart, 2 things. One, we see it working in a community of commit size. We've had conversations with Valdosta, who is using the same kind of to huge success, huge ridership, and it's proving to be successful for that community. But at the same time, I think if anybody was way back in the day, we tried big bus transit. It didn't work, a lot of money. This is a way to smartly really test the transit market, see if it's smart for us and see if it works. But build out a real transit system for our people. If possible, next meeting that we come, no need to reach all of this information, but would love just a map that I think could see, but also that we could provide for future riders in our community. So any more questions or comments for Director Hunter? If not, we'll open it for a motion.
No, I do.
Oh,
I do.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Mr. Hunter, could you or Ms. McDuffie provide kind of a catch us up on where we are? And I appreciate the mayor asking the question and the explanation that was just ensued. But as far as rolling stock, do we need to get through this particular funding so that we know what our budget's going to look like? And we've got some concrete background of information before we launch forward with acquiring rolling stock. Where are we with that?
So we will likely not be acquiring rolling stock. That's a change from very early in this process when we first made applications prior to COVID. It was a big push for us to get rolling stock. The model that Valdosta has used is a turnkey third-party operator, and they take on the responsibility for the vehicles. They take on the purchase of the vehicles, the staying of the vehicles, the cleanliness of the vehicles, and the maintenance of the vehicles, all under the contract. So we would not actually own those vehicles. And that is something that has become a preferred approach through GDOT when we're doing the micro transit approach, because essentially it gives us much more flexibility long term. If we purchase the vehicles, we have to hold them and operate them for their life. So if it's part of an operating contract and things aren't going, we need them or want them to, we've got the ability to change that. So no rolling stock at this time.
So that's good to know. That has greatly reduced our entry level cost
Correct.
for offering public transit, which is great. It gives us a perfect opportunity to launch forward with something that provides a service to our citizens, especially those within our workforce, that this is going to really make a difference for. But it also gives us the opportunity to evaluate, see what the potential growth is. Are we hitting the marks we want to hit? Are we providing a service to our constituents? You know, how's it going? And then what are the next steps from there? So it sounds like it's going to give us a lot of fluidity to introduce the program and then see what needs to be done, and we can be fairly nimble with all of that.
Yeah, I'd agree. And to the mayor's comments earlier about Valdosta, our conversations and our visit with them earlier this year was really enlightening, and how we've been able to do that, and is really one of the advantages to this Thai transit model, and that it's really growing in popularity nationwide. So this is, I think, really going to be a way to enhance our opportunities in Brunswick.
John, with no rolling stock, you're gonna have to have a depot or terminal.
So we will need a daily storage location. We've got plenty of room at Public Works to do that. But we won't need to expand our maintenance facilities or anything like that. It's literally just parking in an office.
Last question for me, and this could be ahead. I know at least the paperwork that I've read through are still different pricing models. How have we, and it could be well ahead of where we are, but can you give the options of what pricing model? Because a piece of it, the city does take care of. Some is free, sometimes it's not. How does that?
In our process, we looked at the $2 to $3 and I think up to a $5 approach. Valdosta, I believe, is doing $2 or $3 with a $1 add-on. Yeah, so if you had people,
Yeah.
so if you had two people in Valdosta, what they're doing, it's $2 for the first per dollar for the next person. So, you know, the idea of making it economical is possible, obviously. You know, I think the other thing to be looking at too for some large employers.
And that's flat fee anywhere in the
flat fee
system.
Anywhere in the route system.
Gotcha.
That's an opportunity for employers to sponsor employees, for different agencies to help sponsor riders from different levels. So that is a little bit ahead of the curve. That's part of what we've got to identify in the RF process and bringing on the provider of the services that they'll help us dial that number to exactly what we need it to be.
And I think one of the things that we have is not only that Valdosta, and our system may not be, duplicative totally to theirs, but they have gone through a lot of the permitting processes for DOT, for federal funding. And, the things that they have done well, we plan to replicate and duplicate. But the other thing is that the system itself, we hope to have the most people who are experts to come to the table and say, this is the best proposal for what your needs are. And, I can't say I totally what that will look like, but I hope that the people who are bringing those transit products to us will bring us, proposals that are viable and feasible for our community. And we get to choose the best that fits what we need in our community.
I appreciate the work on this. I know Valdosta seems to have a lot larger land mass probably than we would too.
So actually, that was things that they gave us the data on is area that they are limited to and that they operate in is almost identical square mileage wise to
Good.
what we're able to operate in.
Okay.
And serves slightly larger population, not much. It was within 5,000. Now, remembering that this does encompass part of the county. So what we're to pick up there makes up the difference because Valdosta is a large, but that geographical area made the, so it's a really good comparison for
Do
us.
they serve the county too, John?
A very small area of the county.
So the county is not involved with their operation?
No.
I want to also say, I think this work is great because I know a lot of times we about workforce ridership. However, I do want to bring up that we have a college that is full of young people
And
who
they
need to
will
get
use it.
around this community. A lot of it's moving between there and downtown, there and other business centers can grow our community, whether you're talking about those who travel within the not only going to the hospital, but going to other businesses. I think the wide array of what true ridership looks like if we do this well, will more than just workforce ridership.
Yeah, it definitely will be. And you mentioned that because my son was a student at Valdosta State and looked through to him and his roommates and they knew about it. So it had to have been they had a pretty good job of getting the word out.
There we go. We get through there. So I appreciate the work on that. If there are any other questions and comments, we'll open it for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve moving forward, and I don't have a copy of the agenda in front of me, but the Transit 5307 funding for budget and planning.
Second.
Here the first and this, all those in favor, show by the sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Director Hunter. City Attorney's items, consider approval of agreement with City of Brunswick and Glen Brunswick Land Bank Authority for the provision of services. City Attorney Corey.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'll do my best to speak through the microphone. What you have before you is intergovernmental agreement between the City of Brunswick, proposed intergovernmental agreement between the City of Brunswick and the Glen Brunswick Land Bank Authority. The Land Bank Authority for the past many, many months have been, I think, working diligently to adopt new administrative policies was completed. And part of doing so, after those policies were completed and adopted, the Land Bank looked to establish a position for an employee that can be solely dedicated to the furtherance of the goals of the land bank. I think it's something, I won't speak for John, but I will speak for myself, that is sorely needed. The land bank is very active in consideration of the authorities and around, and I do think that there's something that needs to be at the helm there. So there has been a committee created by the land bank. They've got a process of establishing a job description and salary range. And in doing so, the discussion arose as to how would be those, as the employee is brought on and interviews are done and looking at qualifications, how would be the best way to serve that employee administratively for not only the employee, but also the land bank. So in looking around at areas, because the land bank doesn't have an established administrative, office and capabilities, I looked elsewhere and found that other cities and counties are utilizing, when they have a small authority that is tasked with employing administrative staff, the cities and counties are entering to IGAs with that authority to provide administrative payroll services for that employee, so that the agency is overly burdened with those administrative services. They can essentially roll it into the county and or the city's HR, payroll, the taxation, all of the things that need to be done. And in turn, obviously the agency is serving and providing resources and going through and seeking out derelict properties, trying around blight, redevelopment services. So the IGA that I put together is based on those type of agreements between I'll call the land bank, it essentially is a redevelopment agency for all intents and purposes, and a city that allows the city to administer the services for the employee while the employee serves at the discretion of the land bank board. So the board, if you were looking at a hierarchy city's chart of employment, this employee would not be on that chart. They are an employee of the Land Bank Authority only. They serve that board, but through an IGA, we're able to provide the city's sort of larger administrative structure to help administer that role. And then the land bank would, because there is budgeted funds now for the land bank, and they have funding from some of the deals they've completed in the past several years, the land bank would reimburse the city for the costs of the salary and the payroll and administrative services that are being provided. That is what this agreement is doing. The land bank took it up last night at the land bank meeting and approved it. And now it is for you to seek similar approval.
Thank you, City Attorney Corey. I'll pass to Commissioner Harris. I know you lead the land bank and led that meeting this evening. Any additional comments you want to add?
No, it's been a long coming, and we are finally at this point that we're ready foundationally to move in some of these areas. And so we've got our policies and some other things in place. And so now we're at the being able to take on this personnel so that they can lead the charge of actually going through the daily administrative functioning of the land bank. And we're going to see a lot start coming forth as this person on board. And so I'm just excited that we're at this point, because we're poised and ready to help be the tool that the city needs as they stand up their housing department to fulfill that need that the city has for housing. And so I'm excited because we're going to be able to the city reach that capacity of fulfilling that need.
Any questions or comment for City Attorney Corey?
Yeah, I've got the question on page 2, Brian. I think it is section 1.4. Authority's right to subcontract. The authority shall have right to subcontract for the provision of any of the services provided under this IGA. They don't have to say anything to us. And go do what in the way of subcontract.
Well, yeah, because the consideration contemplated under this contract is the land bank services. So we already provide essentially in-kind services through legal and John Hunter. And so if the land bank was looking to further John's own entity, to the extent.
Yes, he
right,
did. He
right,
became a verb, an adjective, and a noun,
That's right.
a conjunction.
God of all trades.
That's
Yes,
it.
sir.
So the services, while the city is providing those administrative services, the authority still needs the ability to provide the redevelopment services that are being provided in consideration. So if the land bank grew large enough to, for example, seek out a third party to administer the inventory or keep track of the land inventory, or to, the best example I could think of would be if the land bank contract with a third party provider to maintain the properties it holds by cutting the grass or clearing junk off the property, something along those lines. The land bank can do that without having to go back to the city to say, and it just keeps the autonomy of the two parties. I think that's
Pretty carte blanche, though, really and truly, for something that could really and truly be built. That's the way I see it.
okay. Understood.
Commissioner Cason, if you could speak more loudly into your microphone, it would be awesome. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, I'll sure do that. Thank you.
Commissioner Martin, we're looking at page 2, section 1.4. Authority's right to subcontract. I mean, I understand the point. I do think though that there's separate, I mean, the land bank is of its own. It is by the two governing authorities, the city and the county. So in essence, it could, provide its services the way it sees fit. I think this is just in there to make that there's not an idea that we need to, this is only for the role of providing the administrative services to the land bank to allow that employee to be paid and without significant cost of having our own payroll. And when I say our, I mean the bank's own payroll system, all of that HR. I mean, if you're going to administer the employee through the land bank, I think the land bank would have to go through all those steps to get ADP or whoever we need to service payroll. Actually go ahead and look at trying to get some sort of small HR, whether it be a third party contractor. There's just such significant expenses, and now is not the time that the bank can handle those expenses.
And I think also it allows the land bank to conduct its business in a manner that it really needs to without being over encumbered by a process that has to be followed or other steps and measures that have to be taken, because there are a lot of steps and processes, especially with interim properties and heirs properties, that you already have a huge time commitment to work these properties through. And we need to be able to allow the land bank agency to move at the pace they need to move and not over encumber further with what their duties and responsibilities are.
And I would say to Commissioner Cason's concern, the land bank has just recently adopted comprehensive policies and procedures, including conflict of interest policy and ethics policy, both of which were adopted about a month and a half before we started going down the employment route. The administrative policies are comprehensive, that they lay out how property should be acquired, maintained, and then disposed of. So I would say that that does appear to be sort of a carte blanche, you can do what you want in providing but there are underlying structural policies that are adopted by the land bank that are going to govern how they operate.
Well, perhaps some verbiage should be put there, Brian. This looks far reaching to me. I mean, it really does. You can do whatever you want to do. And this is a big, big opportunity, and it's like we say, we've got things going to swinging, and the city commission's gonna need a little handle on what's going on. That's the way I see it anyhow.
Well, primarily you have handle because you have two commissioners that's on there. That's going to govern these actions that are taken by this land bank. Pretty much the land bank at this present time is quasi city government primarily.
It's gonna be run by one person.
No, that person is governed by the board. It's governed by the land bank board. So that person can't just go carte blanche. They can't just decide for themselves, well, we're gonna do this. It's governed, their actions are still governed by the board, just as the city manager.
That help?
Yes,
That help?
yes, sir. Just as the city manager's actions are governed by this, board, that person's actions are governed by the land bank board. So, and remember that you have two sitting city commissioners that that are on board and will continue to be on that board to govern whatever actions placed by that board. So, yeah. So we've tried to put those mechanisms in, and Brian has. And if something needs to be tightened up to make sure there, I mean, we do what we need to, but because we're going to be cognizant of whatever actions this can take. So it's not like they're just going to be a lone ranger.
Yeah, and I mean, I can add language in there that says subject to the, approval and discretion of the authority's board of directors. If, and I understand, so I understand the concern there, and
Sounds good.
Okay.
That's legitimate.
all right, I can add that verbiage. I don't think that would be an issue. All right.
City Attorney Corey, number one, thank you to Commissioner Harris for leadership of the land bank. I think we have one of the members, Jill Wright, who's here with us. Thank you for your service to the land bank. Julie Martin, her consistent service on the land as well. There's been a lot of process to get a good foundation to get to the point where we're ready to, I think, be in a place where we hire somebody. This looks very Commissioner Case, and thank you for your look. And it, I'm sure could be brought forth amended, which I'm sure we're locking in now. The only question I have, which is a question, if the land bank board fires this person unceremoniously and they decide to sue, are they suing Brunswick? Are they suing the county in Brunswick? Are they suing the land bank?
The land bank is its own political corporation that would be subject to suit.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. That was my only question.
That's all right.
That's correct.
Okay. Good deal. With that, we'll open it for motion as amended. Oh, I can't make a motion. There's two people who can't make a motion here.
Make a motion that we approve the agreement with the city of Brunswick and Land Authority for the provision of services.
I'll second it.
Here in the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
Uh,
Those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. And executive.
Yes, we do have need for executive session for litigation.
All right, we'll open that for motion.
Motion to move to executive session.
Here in the first, do I hear a second? Here in the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. All those opposed, the same. None. This meeting is adjourned for executive session. We will call this meeting back to order. No action was taken in executive session. I will now open the for adjournment. Here in the first and the second, those in favor show by sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passed. Are adjourned.